All right, good evening, everybody. I'm calling to order the Community Relations Committee of the Greenfield City Council. And it is 6 p.m. on the dot. According to my, well,
And you were worried.
I think that clock is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's always wrong. So, first thing is this meeting is being recorded by the Community Relations Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. All right, anybody recording? So the first thing that we will do is a roll call of members, and I don't have my regular sheet here, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got it. Thank you so much. It's a lot easier because then I had in my head say who is on this committee. I don't think we have any counselors online, so we can do this more easily. So, Counselor Wondolowski, I am here. Counselor Brown, here. Counselor Minhas. Counselor Perry,
Yeah.
Counselor Williams.
Here.
Great, we have a quorum. Alrighty. So next order of business is the approval of minutes. Can I have somebody make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. We have an extra pen because this one is not working. Okay, the next thing we're doing is public comment. And so we give 3 minutes for public comment per person. And so I will call names and then folks can come up to the table just so that the microphone can pick it up. It's not like it has to be weird and formal. And then when you do public comment, it's just your name and address. And if you're online, just want to let folks know to put it in the chat, your name, and that way we will put you in the queue for public comments. So I've got Michael Lovett.
I don't, just in case.
Okay, thanks. Well, if something comes up, we'll get you in. All right. So I'm going to close public comment. And I know we don't have to say the time, but I will. It's 6:03. I'm not sure why it has on the agenda communications with city departments, but because that's not a usual piece of this. So we'll skip over to discussion. So we spoke last time about the precinct meetings, and I shared electronically, and I also have a copy of it in case folks didn't look at it online. But this is the amended version of precinct meetings that we've talked about a few times. So you'll see the strikeout in there, and then there was a little bit of wordsmithing going on. So the first section really the only change was about adding hybrid accessible locations to that piece. The 58-3 notice is striking out that this is led by the mayor, but this is really Community Relations Committee taking this on. And then where we post it. And so we talked last time about all of these changes. So these are just reflecting the changes everybody had given. And then the last really section is who is going to be on the panel. So we made some changes based on not inviting everybody and their brother in the community, but giving us some flexibility, especially if there's a pertinent topic to a particular department or other committee. So do you all have any other changes? I think I got in here, Patty, your other change.
I think this looks great. Thank you for doing this.
The question I had
Yeah,
was that who would be chairing the meeting? And it seems to me, well, I have two different ways of thinking on this, which is a little weird, but I'll present both of them.
are you a Gemini?
No, no. And last I checked, I wasn't schizophrenic, but you know.
Okay.
On one level, it seems to me if there's going to be a precinct meeting in the community, that the person who would be chairing the meeting should be the mayor. Because if I'm in the community and there's a big meeting called in my precinct, I want to see the chief executive running it. That's one way of thinking. Another way of thinking is what then is the role of the precinct counselor
Yep.
in this phenomenon? So what role should the precinct counselor be playing since it's their precinct?
Sure.
So I'm like asking, I'm asking the question and I have two different answers for it on some level. So.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Counselors' thoughts? On the one hand, I know if you're the precinct person and you're running the meeting and people are giving you feedback on your precinct and what you should do, it's hard to listen while you're running a meeting. So I could see that, but I think it's also important to have the precinct counselor be seen as someone who has some sort of leadership within that precinct. So yeah, I get your dilemma.
Oh, you've got two answers to the same question too.
I do.
You want to give a stab? Mm-hmm.
No, I just assumed from the beginning when we first started the conversation, when I went back into the minutes of your previous meetings, I just assumed the council would be chairing the meeting. It's their precinct. Why would they? I'll just be a little concerned that to be advocating their role if someone senior to them was chairing the meeting. You know, if the chief executive is chairing the meeting, then the chief executive kind of has the power of the meeting.
Yeah.
Whereas the counselor is chairing the meeting. And we also said, you know, some of the outliers counselors could be there. So that could, you know, the precinct counselor could ask one of the outliers counselors, say, could you run the board or could you take notes or whatever it is? So the chair precinct counselor could be more attentive to what's going on. That was just my initial thought. I can see both sides of the conversation too, but I would think that some people might be a little bit intimidated if the chief executive or their representative was chairing it.
Could we say such panel, because right now it says such panel shall be run by the Community Relations Committee. So could we say such panel shall be run by a designee of the Community Relations Committee? And then if they designate the mayor, they can designate the counselor, whoever is a little bit more, is that too loosey-goosey?
Whoever wants to do it or whoever
Whoever
is
is-
available to do it,
Yeah.
that makes it a lot simpler, I think.
Yeah,
The designee of the Community Relations Committee, I think makes sense. There's some flexibility there.
Yeah, because every meeting might be a little bit different
That's
depending what's going on in the community at that time. So
Well,
maybe, I'm sorry, Laura,
No, go
maybe
ahead.
a counselor might feel a conflict of interest and wouldn't want to.
That's right.
You know, so.
But I know we've talked about like, if you combined like 3 precincts together, then it'd be like, well, then
Yeah, you have.
it's way more important. So we do have, you know, so that way it
Well,
doesn't.
of course, it's more important.
Every day.
I think we'd want to do individual precincts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if it's a small meeting.
Yeah.
Because this was supposed to be happening, never happened. We're trying to get it going.
Yeah.
So once we get it rolling and people see that it's actually a functioning part of city government, then they'll attend. You know, it'll grow. I believe it will grow.
So,
I hope so too, because it's important. So a designee of the Community Relations Committee, I think is fine and dandy.
But
Could I suggest one more
No.
amendment?
No.
Which is, no,
no,
which is on 58.4 on the scheduling.
Yeah.
Just because it says scheduling and consultation with the precinct counselors and mayor, but then
oh,
it's not including a representative of the schools, even though they're supposed to be there. So we could either change that to say after consultation with members of the panel or after consultation with precinct counselors, mayor, and representative from the schools, from the Greenfield Public Schools.
So let me ask this question. The schools are going to be part of every single meeting, but all the other departments are as needed?
Well, that's kind of true anyways, in a way. It
Oh.
depends on what the agenda is, depends what's going on in the community at the time.
That was my question. Are the
Yeah.
schools, do you envision this as the schools being part of every single meeting? Or are they like every other department as designated?
right.
We wrote it
And-
as every meeting.
And why?
I think because we felt like schools are 50% of our budget. And it's important that they hear the community concerns and that we hear some of the school concerns like at the same time. Because
Right.
we also represent people, I mean, the school committee is interesting because it's all at large, so it's,
Yeah.
you know, not specific parts of the city. And that's my recollection from our discussion last week was that, or last
Last
month.
month, yeah, that's what she was kind of, that conversation was a little bit committee to committee to
Yeah.
committee. But we could raise that higher because we had more people involved.
I think it's hard when you've got, I mean, this is just when the discussion about what we want for our schools is over here and the discussion we want for everything else in the city is over here and yet those things touch everything and we've got this like artificial, not completely artificial, but we've got a silo up there and maybe, I don't know. I think bringing down that silos can help.
So then why wouldn't it be either the superintendent or a representative from the school committee?
That makes
Here
sense
it's
to
written-
me. Superintendent.
Oh, I see.
Or a representative from the school committee. Here it says superintendent and members of the school committee.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think we should have the
Okay.
superintendent and the full school committee attending these.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Or a representative from the
Hmm.
school committee. That makes sense.
Mhm.
As I said, we really don't want a whole lot of people being at the head of this meeting. For probably some of the first meetings in the precincts will be maybe 5-10 people showing up.
Uh,
You know what I'm saying?
should we say designee of schools?
Yeah.
And with a S around it, designees, because I know I was listening to one of the school committee meetings and they have concerns about, you know, that they've got a lot of meetings and then they have to come to other meetings, so maybe it's
So the superintendent or
designees.
a designee from the school committee.
Yep,
Sounds great.
okay.
And just to go back to the previous conversation just for a second, so I'm not confused, when we say a designee of the community relations would designate someone, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a member of the committee. It could be anybody. that
Right.
designates.
Right.
Yeah,
It could
just
be
wanna
a third party.
Right, that's why I meant.
It's
So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because sometimes you might want an independent person
You
to
could,
be doing it.
if it's really
depending on what the
controversial.
Conversation is.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's a good conversation. Good. School does.
So we have 3 amendments.
And then if this committee and the school relations committee just churning together, then they'll kind of feed into this conversation.
That's
Because
right.
they'll have the information even before the precinct meeting to say, yeah, we talked about this and da, 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 da. You know, so that's my vision, if we get told me up.
Yeah, no, I think that could be a positive. Something that both committees tackle together.
So do you have all those changes?
I do.
So then can I make a motion that we accept this?
Yes, please.
I make a motion to accept.
All right, and
Second.
okay, all in favor?
I,
All right. So,
Oh,
okay. So just being clear, this will then go to A and O.
Where I will be.
no, oh.
I was gonna go to, where I will be.
Right, and they can decide if they wish to,
Approve,
yeah, and
which we will,
send it over to.
and it will be peachy.
Boy, you are confident.
I am. No, I am. It's fine.
Because
It's good.
we spent a bunch of time. on it.
Everyone's excited about this. People want this to happen.
Yeah.
I have not heard any naysaying about this.
Yep.
So
Plenty to go.
Yeah, they'll come later.
how unusual is that? So
They'll come
let's be
later.
happy about it.
True.
That's
Okay.
good in the waiting room finally.
It just popped up though, so.
Okay. All right, well. That is exciting. So,
Okay?
next thing is, just. It's kind of two things together, but one is just an update from the in-house committee. And then I wanted to talk to us all because we set up this committee. And one of the tenets of it was to have recommendations from the committee. We didn't set a deadline, so, I think after Sarah gives the update, maybe we can have a quick discussion about when do we want the recommendations by? What's reasonable?
Yeah. Committee is going well. We lost Pamela Goodwin recently.
Okay.
She did resign from the committee. But I don't know,
Do we need a new designee from the mayor?
we could, I guess, or you could, mayor could, I'm not
Okay.
sure, but also
Okay.
if we're wrapping up, then
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Maybe we can go back to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just wanna,
And I think the meetings have been going really well, bringing in lots of good guests. I can't even remember all of the guests.
There's a lot of them
But
from all aspects of the community. Yeah.
truly,
Yeah.
the Recover Project, the Continuum of Care, who else has been there?
Food pantry, was it the food pantry or,
I mean, we had the sheriff's
Yeah.
department, we had the police department, we had the police chief, we had,
okay,
who else?
Catholic ministries or? the-
Oh, yeah, we had, the Interfaith
Yeah.
Council, we had someone from Housing Greenfields, like, it's truly been like, almost every time we
The
have,
librarian.
yes,
Yeah.
Helen
Oh, good.
McBride has been participating, actually, a lot of the meetings.
Well, that was pretty good. I did have my notes for you. I remember.
Great, thank you for helping share a second brain with this. Council Ray has been at every single one of them. That's really nice. And we also have had Human Rights Commission member attend because they wanted to focus on homelessness. And mainly what we're thinking about is in a few different buckets. So I'll pull up the notes on this, but I think the goal, like, of course, there's so many people working on this ecosystem.
Right.
And also, it's still an issue. So what can we do in our niche of like, what's local, what's a gap, what's something that like legislation or city council is in our purview? I think is trying to be our angle of like, to be helpful instead of being redundant. We've also had Amy Kaling. I forgot to say that too. And I think our main recommendations, just like the top 4, are improving access to resources through infrastructure downtown and at campsites. So we had a walk with the DPW and Amy and Tapestry to visit the campsites and look at if we could start having trash pickup there.
Hmm.
And it's actually possible, which is great. Like they can drive on the bike path. There will need to be coordination with residents to like use the barrel and
right,
wheel the toter to the curb or the curb. And we also coordinated with Source to Sea and they had like they can't do dumpsters, but the city can have barrels. So they got a dumpster for like getting the backlog of like, there was truly a mountain of trash. Because there hasn't been trash pickup for like 5 years there, basically. And folks can't really, like some folks bring it out every single time they leave, but it still is easy to accumulate.
Yeah.
So basically like how to
When
get,
stuff gets wet and ruined, so like,
Right.
you know, I think it's,
so trash has been like, that's like a low hanging fruit, I guess, I don't know, like.
yeah.
It's something that even if you don't care about human rights, which I hope people do, but still it impacts neighborhood or
It's a health
environmental
issue.
issues,
Yeah.
public health issue.
Yeah.
So I think, and when we were on this tour, we saw no, like needles or drugs, like we went with Tapestry in case and, and there was a successful cleanup there. So.
It's really good to hear, because I've been other times and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, trash is a big one at the campsites.
Could you just explain, in case someone's watching, where you actually went?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's a good idea. So, the two campsites that are, where people are primarily is behind the Greenfield Gardens apartments along the bike path. And then also in the Green River Park area on Petty Plain Road in the woods line. And
behind there's a baseball field, and that's where the dog park and pickle courts are just.
so we also had a successful cleanup at the Green River Park area. And all of this has been just donated time and money and not using taxpayer dollars.
That's that same weekend, the Green River Cemetery Board also cleaned up on top of the hill around the cemetery. There is a problem with people dumping trash up there. Not even people from out of town and stuff that come in and throw the bags over the banks instead of going to the landfill and stuff, so.
I was gonna say, I didn't.
Yeah, so we're trying to, full disclosure, I'm on the board, that's why I know what's going on. But so we're trying to get more of a watch system going to see who's doing that and stuff.
Okay, sorry, and then other collaboration, just to mention, was Greenfield Trash Pickup Club and Opioid Task Force. Because they were,
Yes.
Deb McLaughlin, they're working on cleanups with the sheriff's department, sheriff's office. So the trash, that's a big one. Working on that, we didn't start getting trash pickup there. It requires some more coordination with residents and figuring out the correct volume and whatever. It's still, everything's a thing. But people are motivated and it's really.
That's the quote of the day, everything is a thing.
Everything is a thing. Trash. Would love if there could be other resources at the sites, like currently the porta potties are just seasonal as people are using the parks and then the porta potties go away.
Okay.
But there's not a reason that they have to go away and the water gets shut off for winter, but
Right.
I don't know how plumbing and pipes work, but if there was some way that folks could have access to water year round, access to bathrooms year round, these are sanitation issues that are good for public health as well.
But did anybody ask the question about chemical outhouses?
Yeah.
Instead of the water ones?
Yeah, no, those should be
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
A porta potty could work year round. It's
Sure.
just, we haven't kept it
Right.
as a
Composting toilet.
street too. So these are all the issues at the actual campsite. And then downtown, it would be nice to have like the 24/7 community fridge for access for people. An outdoor water refill station. The police substation was interested in that idea. And the storage locker funding that the Community Economic Development Department got, they are still looking at identifying a site for that, and they were
Oh, good.
interested in our input for that. But yeah, I think that's the main things, like how can people have access to basic survival needs
Got it.
at campsites downtown?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Chief Dodd was really on board with using the substation as an access point for people.
Yeah. And then once you have resources or as you have resources, let's update. So the yellow card up there is the 413 CARES card. So let's make that into a nice map that's visual,
Mhm.
and can have different symbols and have different languages.
So like a resource finding.
Yeah.
Okay.
So updated resource card and a map. And that's something that I talked to FERCog about. Franklin Regional Council of Governance.
Yep, governments.
And
You talked to that person that I sent. you?
yes, thank you so much. That was actually a great
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's possible they can use staff time for this, because they have a budget for housing. So,
Oh, is that Mariah?
yeah,
Oh, good.
so we've met with Mariah as well, Mariah and Megan both. So I think we can also, somebody could volunteer and do it, but it's nice to do it, so then it's like officially housed within FERCog. Right now, it's Pamela McBride's project. It used to be Christian and Community Economic Development.
Okay.
So I think that's the main things about resources: downtown, campsites, and then the presentation or the distribution of the knowledge.
Okay.
In a resource card map. So that's all on that topic, but this is one of the buckets, and then there's more. So this is one, there's a lot of ambitions. So I don't
Well,
know.
that's my next question. Is the subcommittee still fired up and ready to go? or-
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know, I could go through the other ones too. But they're not, I think resources is like top, but the other ones is just that, as we know, the site that people are camping floods. It flooded 3 times this year. It will flood in the spring again as there's a thaw. And that's not sustainable. So
And it's a public health issue.
public health issue,
Yeah.
and it's in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act to have like humans inhabiting within 100 feet of the waterway. So it's ecologically sensitive area. It's not good in any way you slice it. So,
Right.
so, and also it's destroying people's property or possessions.
Personal possessions.
Yeah. So because of that, looking at sites that could work, this is way more complicated than I hoped. But it's basically looking for another site is hard. Like if you look at public land, there's not even an ideal parcel of public land. If we were to get over the political will of having, it's solvable. Other towns, other cities have done it where you have like a liability, a contract, and there's an indemnification clause. You can do it legally, but even if you're looking at public land, there's not like an ideal spot necessarily either. So looking at private land is the next good thing. So we're still looking at like, what are some sites that could actually be an investment to have more of like a campground style or like a village model is what this is called. And other places are using this. And so basically just like a campground that, but instead of it being temporary, folks can have stability there. At Dignity Village in Portland, Oregon, they, on average, folks live there for 2 years. And it's a good like transitional interim housing situation. And they live in like a tiny home or like a little whatever structure. So minimal dwellings, or even like a trailer or a camper. So that's something that is not possible under our current zoning. It could be if we worked on it, and that's something that this committee could put a recommendation forward around. And I think that that's a good direction to head towards. So basically, this village model, we could tweak the existing, I talked to Mariah and Megan from FERCog, we could tweak the existing campground zoning and because it says stuff like it needs to be at least 10 acres in rural residential and it's only to be occupied on a temporary basis, but we could amend some of that and you could still have it go through like a site plan review. And then it would still have like utilities, it would still have bathrooms, like if you basically, it's sort of like a harm reduction perspective, the fact that people are already doing this, but we can just make it a little bit more humane and also safer.
Right, but it sounds like the first thing to find is something.
A site.
A site.
And the site needs to be within access to resources downtown, within public transportation, like there's really particular qualifications that limit sites that make sense. But I have one in mind.
Because I was gonna say,
Write it down.
I was gonna say Barton's Cove Campground, but it's not close to downtown
Right.
by any means.
No.
No, it's isolated.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Okay, so that's another one. And then it's something, I don't know if I'm going too long, I can try and wrap this up if it's too much, but there's more, honestly. It's a dense committee. We've talked about a lot. But another thing is just that right now, on public land, it's trespassing to be on public land between 10 PM and 6 AM. So homelessness is essentially criminalized and at the discretion of law enforcement, because you can't actually camp anywhere.
Right.
You can't be in a parked car overnight. So you can't be in a parking lot, you can't be, so there's nowhere you can be. So that's something that would be worth changing, but it's also difficult to figure out what exactly the recommendation there is. I've talked to the National Homelessness Law Center. They said you can strike through curfews, like trespassing. So that's one option. Another option is to say something about the purpose or intended use, like not appropriate if it's conservation or recreation, or like you could make it more restrictive than just striking through the that. So that's something to navigate with the police chief
Okay.
about what they feel comfortable,
Yeah,
how to phrase that.
And he made it clear that they don't go looking for people. There's a big difference between someone sleeping in the big wide parking lot.
Yeah.
Than there is someone sleeping in the Greenwood Park where they know people are all the time. So they're not gonna, they don't go on their way looking for people.
They do a nightly check.
Yeah, do know you
To
check,
go
but they
to
don't,
each lot and
Right,
make sure people
right.
aren't sleeping there. So Miller's Meadow,
yeah,
every night, folks have to leave. So there is
yeah.
that's the rounds.
I mean, I have an old neighbor who lived in a car and it was hard because it was like where to park again to be,
Yeah.
because she felt safer in a car than
Yeah.
out in the
Yeah.
elements, so.
So that's another thing to consider. And then also just maybe simpler fixes is that, right now mobile homes are banned. And that's an outdated term. Anything after 1970, whatever, is actually has to be, following HUD guidelines, and it's a manufactured home. And
I saw that, was it the FERCog study had
Yes.
some zoning suggestions and that was one of them.
so we should strike through anything that bans mobile homes because it's irrelevant, and manufactured housing is actually half the price per square foot as stick-built housing. So that's a really affordable housing option, that's naturally affordable. And we can also think about mounted tiny houses, so tiny houses on wheels. Those could be considered. Right now you can't have anything on a trailer, but 6 towns in Massachusetts have legalized mounted tiny houses, and 5 states. And there's currently like a state bill in the Mass legislature to regulate mounted tiny houses. And there's a whole appendix Q
On
of,
public property,
oh, sorry?
on public property.
No, like-
Anywhere.
Yeah, to
Like
just,
you could buy a quarter of a lot or like a tiny lot to put your tiny house on, or in your friends, and then when does it become an ADU?
I know, God forbid it becomes an issue at this time,
It's legal.
but
It's legal to be ADUs are legal, remember?
yeah. So that's another thing.
No, that's the tiny house was a huge thing because a few years ago was looking into it and it was so impossible from town to town for people to do that. And some of the designs are just super cool
Mhm.
and a really good like starter place for somebody.
And there's a whole part of the building code, appendix Q, that defines exactly how tiny homes have to be built. So there's nothing like off about it. It's totally legal. It's just we have to allow it if we want to, which I think we should, because I mean, that's one way to get costs down without getting subsidy, is just allowing minimal dwellings like tiny homes and manufactured homes.
Can I ask a question also on this? And I don't know if there's been discussion about this. I know at least last year, there was warming centers
Yeah.
set up. Are they already in place for this coming winter?
Yes,
Good.
Salvation Army is going to be used again as a warming center, and the Medical Reserve Corps is helps
Steps.
volunteer staff it. And Sarah Ahern, who's the Opioid Use and Prevention Commission Chair and works for the Recover Project.
Yeah.
She's the one who's
Coordinating.
it.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I think these are, and then, sorry, okay, is that too much? Okay, that's basically the main ones, but then there's other related strategies just of like the affordable.
I'm gonna do a
housing.
mind map of all of this.
It's
It's
the
really a
biggest,
lot.
the biggest thing is finding a campsite.
I think that's the number one.
That's the big issue
That's
here, right?
truly what people want and are most excited about. People who, like the members on the committee with lived experience, or even just being out about town, like that's the number one thing that people want.
Right.
And then just the other things that I won't go off too much about, but just like affordable housing ecosystem stuff about like an affordable housing trust, a rental registry, short-term rental ordinance, advocacy for rent control, things like that. So
Yeah.
just it's the whole ecosystem, but that's the bigger part of the mind map. That's like,
No, this is great because I think the next step is really like the committee's recommendations. And then I think we identify like, who do you recommend doing those things?
right.
Do we keep this committee going to tackle some of those issues? And I think that could be a recommendation from the committee
To keep the committee going.
if that's what you think.
I mean, part of,
Or does it become its own commission?
right. It could. Part of me is like, if we stop being an official committee, then we can just switch all our focus onto creating a campsite and not do that in public meetings. Like, and that doesn't necessarily involve the city. Like, we need to set the conditions. That's the part that involves the city council,
Right.
like making the actual zoning so that it's legal. But then the work of actually doing that is like a lot of coalition building and doesn't necessarily need to be a public city meeting.
Well, and as we were at that meeting this spring and just thinking about how government structure sometimes kills good ideas
Yeah.
just because it's hard to navigate everything. And so if you all wanted to spin off and keep doing good work once the official stuff can get where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that might be the pathway that makes the most sense, is just like, let's wrap up the official, like legislative side and the executive branch side, which a lot of the resources are more about the executive branch, but then moving on towards actually just meeting over at campsites where folks can join and figuring out. But-
Meeting as a committee, you mean?
No, just
No.
like we've already had some meetings
Yeah.
with folks that the chief of staff actually connected me to someone who has been working on this idea of like the village model for a while. So continuing that work, but just outside of this. But I was thinking in terms of timeline. And some people would maybe like this committee to continue, and it totally could also. I'm not sure. But timeline wise, part of me is like wanting to make sure that I want to present these recommendations at a time that it will be impacted and or like impactful and implemented. And so I'm like, if we're turning over the council this year, then or if it's 7, or I guess I don't know how many folks are actually outgoing counselors, but it could be before the end of the year, or it could be in like January, February, but maybe folks already have enough if they're newly joining council. But just trying to think about presenting it at a time when we actually have a little bit of bandwidth to actually then, because everything here is a rabbit hole to get into.
Yeah, I mean, you potentially have 4 counselors.
Yeah. So I don't know, timing wise, I think we basically have the ideas baked in terms of what, or they're half baked in terms of these are the topics we want to work on, but then the actual follow-up of like, this is the part that needs to be, we need to strike through this, and then this is what you put in, like, that's not all 100% there. But
I
I
couldn't remember when we actually got going and if that was
April,
April, okay.
yeah,
It doesn't really matter what the makeup of the council is, because if the subcommittee
Yeah.
thinks this is important enough, you just got silent, doesn't matter who's on the council, because there's gonna be other besides the council involved, whatever, it's a planning board or zoning
Right.
board. So it's not, you know, I don't know, if I wouldn't.
It'll bounce around for a while. It
Yes, I
doesn't
wouldn't really worry
exactly,
about who's on council.
doesn't matter the timing of that. Okay.
For the December meeting, if that was possible for the December council meeting.
Seems reasonable. I can let folks know on the committee about that. Our next meeting is TBD, but the sheriff's office got some grant funding to work on unhoused issues and they wanted to reach out to us. If we could
Fantastic.
hopefully
So-
get a little grant funding as well.
So it sounds like there's no burnout yet. Sounds like you guys are, you want to continue and you're interested in staying on as chair of the subcommittee.
I want to get it done.
Then you have to be chair.
That's-
That's the criteria.
There you go.
So just checking, you know, I don't want to assume it.
That's enough. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. It's a big thing.
Right. No, this is great work.
It's
And
What fascinates me is you're so off the radar until something happens. You know, and then it becomes a big, you know, oh my
Right.
God type thing. But right now, you guys for 5-6 months have been doing quiet behind the scenes work, getting people involved who have, you know, a stake in the process and stuff. So it's been fascinating to watch.
Oh.
I'm a little worried, as you just said, the first time something happens where there's a, you know, so I don't say a scandal, but publicity where people start jumping up and down.
I am a
Then,
little worried about
Yeah.
presenting this publicly.
Yeah. I don't have much
Well, I
choice
think if you-
eventually, you know.
I think if you're gathering the evidence and the best practices and the, like, this is what the community wants. That's, you know, and you're an organizer, so
Yeah.
then that's,
We've got a lot of community coalition building and
Yes,
support.
and that's important.
It is really
That'll
important.
help.
Yeah.
You know, weather the storm a little bit when that stuff does start happening. And who knows, that could be 6 months down, or it could be one blizzard away. We don't know
Right.
what's gonna happen. You know,
I mean, and I know the pushback is like, you know, Greenfield is going to hell in a handbasket and is downhill, and I don't feel safe bringing my family downtown because there's a lot of panhandlers, or however it gets worded, right?
Yeah.
But working on solutions, that's how we, you know, build that trust.
Right.
And I'll tell
really
people, I tell
it's-
people that when
Yeah.
I hear a snide remark, I'll say, go talk to Counselor Brown. You
Yeah,
know, because, and I've done that at least 3 times, I can think off my head, where I've said, hey, if you got a problem, go talk to Counselor Brown.
yeah.
She's working on this
Oh,
stuff,
great.
you know, so.
It's literally a matter of life and death. People, like the couple that passed away behind Stop and Shop over the winter, a couple years ago. So
It is life and death.
it's life and death and it's happening regardless of whether we wanted to or not. And acknowledging the reality helps us make a solution.
Right. I
for
mean,
everybody.
it is complicated.
Yeah.
It's extremely
You
complicated.
know, we have an
And
economy that's not working for everybody. We
Right.
have a lot of housing, like all of these pieces come together. We, you know, we were coming through an opioid crisis.
Homelessness is rising in the area.
Yeah,
Yeah, what it doubled.
yes.
So it's complex and controversial. When you get those two together, boom. You know,
Well, I
so
think-
just stick with it, you know, don't worry about this.
I think though also that the usefulness of laying out all these different pieces is then you create a priority process.
Right.
Right.
Because it is so complex. You can go in 18 different directions at
Right.
once and get nothing done.
Right.
With the best intentions. I mean, it can happen that way versus, okay, the big question, the campsite, or what are the 3 main things?
Right. If we do these 3 things or this one
Right.
thing, this
Exactly.
helps all the other.
Exactly. And that's where the energy gets expended. And what are the aspect, do the whole strategic planning on each one
Yeah.
is, which is, you're more than capable of doing and leading people to do that. And
And
that's-
she has been doing that. You've done a great job chairing the meetings and keeping people on task and sticking to the agenda. Because you're right, that's what happens. You get 10 people on the table and 6 different interests, but you do a good job.
I lean more towards chaos.
Yeah,
but-
But you also,
Really.
you bring it back, by the end of the meeting into the, you know.
Yeah.
what
Well,
you're
you,
there
you need
for.
chaos to get all the ideas though.
A lot of
That's
issues.
true. Yeah, but then the
One
sort,
of the best.
you have to do the sort. That's what organizers do.
Exactly.
They sort.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Triage.
Great. Any other discussion on this item? Okay.
Thank you.
So this was a last minute addition is the remote meeting technical challenges. So it was brought up by one of my constituents and we had a little bit of a back and forth, but I think what I'm understanding, there's a few different things. One, people chairing meetings don't always know how to work the Zoom. And that's city councilors, and all the different commissions. And then the second issue is tech issues with the audio is bad, and I know we have, different venues and some of our commissions, I don't know where they're doing their virtual meetings. So I thought the first way to tackle the city council not understanding how to use Zoom, and sometimes I'm in that bucket, so I'll give like at least, this setup over here, that after the next, I asked Kathy after the next committee chairs meeting, if we can just do a little tutorial. Because that'll be at least most of the committee chairs in one place. And then what she said to me was like, we have this hybrid meeting thing, so who teaches the other commissions in Greenfield how to use our tech? And there's no one designated for that, after we created our ordinance to allow. And, I think she's right in saying like, this is not my job.
What about Jonathan?
Of teaching people how to be technical business. I suggested this constituent, contact IT, did you say anything like that at all?
Yeah, that would be the other. So, I mean, I don't know who knows how to use this and would be a good person for training, but Jonathan is good. And I don't know his,
Javier, is that his name?
yeah,
Fernando?
Fernando.
Fernando.
Yeah.
I learned on the fly, so I can do it in emergency, but there's a lot of pressure about making sure you turn off the mics when you end the meeting and make sure you stop recording
I
and
know.
make sure.
Because we're old. That's because we're old, dear.
Yeah, well, I know, so, but that's the.
But it's
pressure
also
I
hard to
feel.
run a meeting
Right,
and
do
look at
that
that.
stuff, making sure no one's waiting to get in, all that
Right.
sort of stuff,
Right.
I mean, I think the best practice is actually probably designating someone
Somebody
in a
else.
meeting
Right.
to do that. An
Yeah.
official role.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing to be trained. I just look at buttons and I'll push any button. I'm not afraid of it.
But there's been one or two hot mic incidents where you want to be careful, where someone thought they were offline and said something,
Yes.
and, that becomes.
People aren't being mindful about what they
Yeah.
say. That's why. But also there have been meetings canceled because of lack of the inability. I've been in several different meetings that were canceled because they couldn't get in. People were very upset about it, and I understand that. People log on and they want to get on and they want to understand what's going on and they want to participate and they can't.
That's right. That's right.
And it's frustrating as hell. So I understand people complaining about it. And yeah, training should happen so we all know what we're doing.
So how about I'll reach out to Aaron and then CC Jonathan and Fernando and see if we can get somebody who'd be willing to train the other commissions. And then in that same email, I can ask Fernando about the sort of audio issues and like, do we need upgrades in other places that don't have as good?
The fire station seems to be fine.
Yeah. And that's what because I don't log into any of those commissions, so I don't know which ones are harder to hear than others.
Some of them are here, some of them are in the fire department. I think there's a couple over on Sanders Street, I think. I might be wrong. I'll have to go back and look. We'll have to go through and look at every freaking commission.
I know, because that would drive us crazy. And I don't remember where the other locations for meetings are besides, because we had a list, right, of
Why don't we have,
sanctioned.
ask somebody in Kathy Scott's office, maybe Tammy or somebody, to send out an email to all the commission heads and ask if they've had trouble.
Okay,
It's good.
That way, we don't have to go through a list, and
yep.
it seems like there's a expedient way of doing that.
Yeah, and Tammy will also know where all the like remote meetings happen because she has to schedule those usually.
Yes.
I tipped off the constituent that we're gonna talk about this. I'm surprised they're not here, but they might be busy doing something else.
Yeah.
It would help to get a little bit of their feedback, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did ask for
Yeah.
them, when I emailed back and I didn't get any suggestions of where is especially frustrating.
Yeah.
Because I definitely want to be mindful of that. And then the last topic in that they had mentioned was just open meeting law. And I think in my response, we have Clerk Scott who helps us to make sure we sort of stay within open meeting law usually. But we've got all these commissions who might not know really. So again, maybe there's like, do we do an open meeting? And I know
Even if it's a cheat sheet.
Right.
You know, just 10 bullets of yes, no, don't, watch out, just so people are aware of the, what you can't do.
I like the idea of a cheat sheet, and I don't know if
State has that already?
yeah, because there's the Office of Open Meeting Law that you like can call when there's issues. So
We all have to do the like state ethics
right.
annual training, but does every commission member, like any city body?
I think
Everything.
if you're under oath, yes. I'm trying to remember, I think I did it when I was on the HRC every year, yes.
And that kind of covers.
Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
So I'm on the tax fund committee, the elderly disabled tax fund, and
Yeah.
we don't have to do it for that.
But if you're chairing a meeting and someone on the Zoom says, they're breaking the meeting law, if there's a cheat sheet there, you can look and say, oh, yeah, we are, okay.
Right.
Or you can say, no, this is within the
Right.
rules of, that's it. If it was on the spot moment where someone accuses you of doing something wrong.
You could even have it up here, bulletin board, literally just
Yeah,
sign.
and get it blown up. No, really.
It's not.
So I'm wondering if one of you all would be willing to reach to see if there's anything like through the state, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I can do that.
Thank you. I was like, I don't want to sign up.
How you doing, Renee?
That's a.
Okay. Because I think that's a good first step, at least to.
Yeah.
Make sure we're all compliant. And, I also understand like there's the flexibility and the grace of like, I try and think ahead, but then something pops in the news or something pops in my head. And then you want to ask that question of like the mayor, and I didn't submit it 5 days in advance or, to make it on the agenda. So I can also understand why people get frustrated. So there's always going to be that dance. So, cool. All right. And then we last meeting brainstormed some potential future issues for action. And I thought I wanted to just, of those 4 things, which are a city council handbook, flooding issue progress, noise issues, and city listening sessions.
Could I ask what is city listening sessions? What was that again?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Okay. So that-
The precinct meeting,
maybe
maybe
that-
like the listening sessions.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna just cross that off then.
Great.
Of those 3, is there something we want to?
Well, I should touch bases on the noise issues. The Precinct 7 Neighborhood Network Group was working on that. They have a draft ordinance. So let me ask
Okay.
the group leader, they took the summer off.
Would they like to come to our next community relations? and
I
talk
will
about
ask.
these issues?
I will ask if they want to do that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, when the last time I asked the question, they said they put it on hold because there was too much going on in the city and they didn't want to, there was just too much going on. But now that things, especially after 2 weeks from now, when things calm down a little bit, maybe there'll be more, they can give us an update. Let me, email the chair and ask her what the status is and if she's interested in coming in. And then I'll let you know.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I think there's also like in my precinct, the grow facility and, you know, the fans have, people have complained about that, although it seems a little better. I don't know when I woke up. Yeah. At least when I was walking.
These guys did
you
a
know,
lot of work. They worked, they went to a lot of the department heads talked about specific issues. They went and reviewed other noise ordinances from other towns. So they've done a lot of research, even if they hand it off to somebody else.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of work.
Yeah, so I'd love to have them come
Yeah.
over in November. And then flooding issues progress. I know the mayor mentioned the grants and the possibility of grants, right? Wasn't that at the meeting last week? So I don't know if we want to at some point ask Councilor Bottomley to come back and talk to us about how things are going.
Also, is it, I kind of also want Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee to like help. I feel like they could pick up some more issues.
Oh, good.
So I feel like maybe no offense, I'm literally in the committee. I mean, it's busy, but it's like it needs.
So maybe
Needs
December.
more work. Even more busy.
Well, maybe in December, bring back in, because I think the flooding issues in the city are more than just the hay.
Right, it is.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of stormwater.
Yeah, our street,
Yes.
that street where it rains, yeah.
Yep, so that's. You know, and this is. You know, with climate, we're just gonna have more flooding. So how's the city addressing that? All right, and then last item, Counselor Brown, you've talked about a city council handbook, which I feel like some of these other things we've talked about, like whether it's the open meeting law and how that works, you know, there are elements that can go into like, how do you use the Zoom?
Yeah.
How do you have a meeting?
I still feel excited about that idea. I have a draft that I modified from Northampton City Council that I just worked on for my own benefit.
Yeah.
But if I got that to Kathy and then she gave input, that could potentially go somewhere. And then also taking Citizens Academy. And
Oh, nice.
I feel like those kinds of, those slides and whatnot, like, I feel like this is something I do want to like work on this project too at some point.
Well,
But it might be after the Citizens Academy might make, I don't know, or maybe.
should this be a community relations, like sometimes I think of us as like a governance committee on a nonprofit board, so it's like the functioning of the organization, because there's, you know, the chairs decide what goes on the agenda, but there's nobody's sort of like, how do we make sure the council is functioning well?
Right. Yeah, and school committee has a handbook already for themselves for Greenfield, so it seems reasonable to have a handbook.
Well, I think I asked you this the first month you were here. You took the oath and did anybody talk to you about this is what to expect, or this is what you were looking for? Did you get
I've
any
had several
paperwork?
discussions with people,
But
but
no paperwork and that sort
I've
of
got
stuff.
some paperwork.
Probably the charter.
I got the charter and a few other things in a blue notebook that's been useful.
Yeah, I know you get the folder of like the rules and procedures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the Charter and
Yes.
like Godspeed.
And then I just ask questions
Right, yeah.
and proceed in my clumsy way to proceed.
Well, I do remember because I had run in there, because I went to the MMA conference right after I joined and was chatting with somebody from Northampton, and they're like, yeah, we have a handbook that helps like make sure people know what's expected of them
Right.
and how. to
I think
be a counselor.
the most useful thing would be, what is the process of getting something done?
Yeah,
How do you do that? So what are the steps? And again, I want to get this done. What do I have to do? Who does it have to go to?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. That would
Yeah.
be extremely useful.
Yeah, because there was a few times where I called the wrong person.
Oh, all the-
And they were like, you need to be talking to so-and-so, not
Right.
me, that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of it's like the Citizens Academy stuff, like just, understanding like what's in our purview,
Yeah,
what, and then what's the process, even I know somebody asked me about a dangerous intersection and I talked to Marlo and like, no, it's go to the like public safety or,
Yeah.
stuff like that is really.
I went to
important.
everybody,
Yeah.
got done.
or even when people are talking to us about like FERDA, and it's like, we don't, like, people don't, I mean, hopefully if you're becoming a counselor, you know, but like, people really don't understand what the city works on, what the state is responsible for,
Completely.
like, it's federal government's. But that's, I guess, getting more into public education. We would just need to focus on the council handbook.
Yeah, it would be useful to have one.
But I think that's part of
Yeah.
a little piece of it. So maybe this is a 2026 we tackle in this committee. Does that sound right?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then we
If
can,
anyone wants to see a draft, I can share it with up to one other person per open meeting law. So that's good.
I might look at it
I guess I
after
could
the election.
actually, okay, good. I guess I could share it to all of you if I sent it to Tammy.
Yeah, send it to
Yeah.
Tammy.
Maybe I'll do that. And then it needs tweaking, but then we can.
Okay.
Well, we say, oh, well, you mean to us?
Yeah.
The community relations committee.
The committee, not to the full council.
No, no, I don't want to.
Wait a Bob with
Can I-
that one.
No.
So-
Can I note that there are a couple of things that were mentioned in the minutes that didn't make it onto the new agenda?
okay.
The demolition of the building, precinct 6,
Oh,
that it didn't make it onto our agenda tonight. And then also the intersection of High and Sanderson, which I have an update on,
okay.
actually. So I'm very pleased to say that digital slowdown thingies, whatever they're called, were placed at Madison Circle on High and on Beacon and High,
Okay.
each facing the correct way.
Yeah.
And so the slowing down of traffic is happening now in that area.
Okay.
There still may be need to slow traffic on Sanderson itself. But there is a new committee being formed via the Parking and Traffic Commission.
Okay.
Because there's been so many issues coming forward from folks about cars speeding here or cars parking there, et cetera, all over the city,
Yeah.
that there has to be a streamlining
Mm,
of a place for people to bring these issues.
yeah.
So when that is in place, it was on the last agenda of the Parking Commission, my understanding. When that is formed and in place, then I will proceed to talk about Sanderson with folks from Sanderson at the meeting.
Okay.
Are those signs permanent or temporary? The flashing things on High Street?
Permanent, as far as my understanding, I wrote a thank you note to the DPW for getting them there
Okay.
because people were very aware of many accidents happening
Yeah.
at that intersection. And you've got school, hospital, playground, Beacon Park. I mean, you've got everything going on there. And there was one fatality last year. I mean, it was serious business. It wasn't frivolous by any means. So hopefully this will work. And then the other one being the house, the burned down house on School Street.
Oh, okay.
So this is a long saga of the landlord being at sea on his yacht apparently for a month and
Wow.
couldn't reach him. And now it still hasn't been demolished, but it's on the top of the agenda. And my understanding is that they were ready, according to the mayor, they were ready to start fining the landlord because
Okay.
the fire happened like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
People have been dumping trash onto that lot.
Right. And then, and you don't know if you're getting squatter, like all kinds of
Raccoon family has moved in
course.
and, there's rodents. And the folks living next door, the Nix family, have shown the patience of saints
Yeah.
around this, but they've had enough. they have really had enough of this, and it's really horrible. And every time I go over there, I see more junk that people have thrown over the fence. It's just like, what's wrong with people? They're putting traction there. It's ridiculous. So that's been a problem, but my understanding is that there's like 24 different housing areas in the city that have become problematic in one way or another right now, and they're all attempting to be dealt with by the mayor's office. That's my understanding.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Something.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we want to ask him if he doesn't say there's a too late?
We're past public comment, aren't we?
Yeah, we're past that agenda item, unfortunately.
So I just wanted to give an update.
Yeah.
I'm following up on both of those things, so.
I'm wondering if we might want to add to a future agenda, and it could be next month. And we could ask the city to come and talk about, problematic buildings. Because one of the things I've heard, we're swirling about the Hope Street thing, but people talking about other properties in town that, could, if they were maintained or auctioned, it's properties we don't control, but where do we have a say in making sure that they're safe,
Why don't we ask the mayor to come?
Yeah.
She knows about this. I mean, she's had these meetings.
Okay, so.
And Amy knows a lot about
Amy.
receivership and foreclosed properties.
Right.
And
Yeah, I just don't know if there's an insurance issue. I asked that question, not the fire chief, but one of the fire officers, and he said sometimes it sits for so long because there's an insurance issue. You can't razz the house until you get the money,
Right.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about if that's true on School Street or not.
Yeah. Well, this seems, but it's been going on for many, many, many months, so, yeah.
Another issue that could be on a future agenda, well, I noticed that there will be a order from the mayor for in your precinct, the old school. And it feels like one of those things that I think community members would like to talk about, and we had hoped the Community Relations Committee would be a place where we could have a discussion, so.
Yeah, I saw that pop up on the agenda last month and I tipped off the precinct 7 neighborhood group and said, hey, you may want to, go into this meeting and hear what's being talked about. And I didn't get any feedback from that. Was it the planning board or the zoning board last month was on their agenda? Maybe, yeah. But then I didn't hear what happened. Are we gonna see it next month or?
I don't know.
Because that's gonna be another controversial type of
Well,
conversation.
no, and that's why
Depending on what, decided, but.
Well, and that's what I think we're hoping is helpful
Yes.
for this committee is like, let's get feedback and have conversations before it becomes a flashpoint,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
us, the mayor, know what people want.
Especially when I think that's the lesson I learned from the current thing that's going on. If it's a long developing issue, if you're telling people every freaking month what's going on, there's no real surprises. After the fact or as it's happening, because there's a lead up to it. You have a runway where people, we talked about that in May, we talked about that in June, we talked about that in July. So by the time it gets to the point where the council's voting on something, people at least heard about it. It's not a big surprise type of stuff, I think that's the lesson I learned. I've learned for the last 4 or 5 months, that people seem surprised sometimes. Never heard about it before, that sort of stuff.
And it's hard because,
Yeah.
we're all busy.
Yeah.
So you miss the notice and then it's like, I don't know any about that.
Okay.
Great. So, I think we've covered everything. Ryan, I just want to mention, because we talked about the, tech issues before you got on the call. And so we've got some courses. So one, we'll be doing a training for the committee chairs after the next committee chairs meeting. Second, we'll be reaching out to Aaron Fernando from IT and Jonathan to figure out who can train the other commission chairs and committees. And then Tammy, we're gonna reach out to Tammy to also check about the other remote meetings, and which ones have been having trouble and where all those are held. So then we can start checking the equipment. And so that way, looking at where we might need some upgrades and considering in next year's budget. So that
Thank
is-
you for that very much. Like, I appreciate that. No, I'm not supposed to talk, so I won't say much, but I very much so appreciate you guys' effort on this. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and the last thing we also talked about was open meeting law and creating, if you will, like a cheat sheet for all of the commissions and committees so that they know the rules. The rules, yeah. And maybe getting a blown up one on the walls of our various places so that it's like, do this, don't do that. So thank you. We appreciate your ideas getting us here. So I will take a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Or second, and then all.
Second, okay. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. It's 7:11 and we are adjourned.